I am Kim Tracy with the Maxwell James Speaker Agency in Denver, Colorado. We are dedicated to connecting phenomenal speakers and trainers and consultants with excellent trade shows, conventions, annual business symposiums, as well as corporate training, seminars, workshops, and even multi-day events. My guest this afternoon is Gary Lear of Resource Development Systems in Macon, Georgia. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to see you in person.
Shalom. Ostosuye Tikla. Cherokee, good afternoon to you.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit, so the viewers get to know you, as well as what RDS does.
Well, let me go with Resource Development Systems first and then tell you more about my role with it. Resource Development Systems is an organizational performance consulting firm where what we do is we go out, we've been researching now for about 14 years on what drives high performance in organizations. And then we're taking that research and finding ways to apply that back in the organization so organizations can move from those mediocre and good organizations up to being the best. And my role with that has been, I've been leading the research. I'm the one that started it. I got started back in 2002. I'd finished a big project up at Educational Testing Service and had spent a year up there setting up a division for them. And I'd come back home and I said, okay, I want to find a way that I can do like I did there and make a major difference in an organization. So, well, if I'm going to make a difference, I got to find out what does make a difference. And so that's why I sat down and I started doing the research. The initial research took about 3 years to do. It involved over 100 research documents, and some of those research documents contained multiple research studies, and then also covered about 50 or 60 books on organizational performance. And what we were trying to do was figure out it's real easy to sit there and go, well, this is saying this and that's different, and then what's they're saying over here. What I was trying to find out was what were they all saying that was the same. And so as we worked through it and I was doing the research on it, started seeing 3 or 4 things start to come out, then 5, then 6. And by the time we finished the initial round of research, we'd found 7 things, and that's what we call the 7 elements of high performance. And those elements are, I better do this right because I'm doing it off the top of my head, but put people at the center of everything you do. We found that the people were of an organization, when organizations really believed, it wasn't just lip service, when they really believed that their people were what made the difference in their ability to deliver to their customers, then those organizations tended to stand out. So you put people at the center, and if people are going to be at the center, then you have to have a foundation of trust, both between the management and management trusting employees and employees trusting management. So we found that trust was the absolute foundation, and that if trust didn't exist, then the other relationships didn't either. Then the next thing is personal responsibility. Everybody's looking for employees that are personally responsible. And so to get personally responsible people, though, is more than just saying you're responsible. And if it goes wrong, you're to blame. It was actually about allowing people to make individual decisions about their jobs. And so those became the foundational elements. And then as we started looking at some of the other elements, we found that, well, if you didn't have a direction of where you're going, then all of this was for naught. So you had to have a vision of aligned purpose, values, and goals. The next element was leadership. And it was more than just being management, and it was more than the dichotomy, and we'll talk more about that later today, I hope, is that it was about getting people connected to the organization and to the work that they were doing. And so leadership became about creating those emotional connections. The next element was strengths and accentuate the positive. And there's a whole body of research around the strengths movement and focusing on what you do well, what you have those natural talents for, not what you don't have those natural talents for, but also around this positive psychology and about how when you accentuate and focus in on the positive and the things that are going right, amazingly, the things that are going wrong tend to start disappearing because the more right things you're doing, there's less time, less space for wrong things to exist. So, and there's, like I said, there's just tons of research out there in regards to this area. Was just reading an article, as a matter of fact, not long before airtime, in regards to this issue of providing positive feedback in performance appraisals as opposed to the negative feedback in performance appraisals.
Absolutely.
So that positive focus on strengths was very important. And then finally, the last element was innovation, because good enough is not enough. If you're not growing, if you're not working on trying to get better, then you become stagnant and you start falling behind. So, and it wasn't just about innovation for innovation's sake. It's about driving the innovation to take the organization forward to achieving its purpose. So we come back to that purpose, that vision again, because the purpose is why we exist other than to make money. So not, a lot of people start businesses just to make money, and they may be highly successful. How long they may be highly successful, I don't know. The research is telling us that unless they do eventually find their purpose, that high performance probably won't last.
Okay.
So having that purpose, and then the values that bind your behaviors, and then the goals, which are not short-term goals, are very, very long-term goals. We recommend to our clients to get out of the annual 5-year strategic planning, to stop setting up stuff that saying, well, these are 5-year goals, and then a year later you're changing them anyway. And we try to get them to focus on 20, 30, or sometimes what we call forever goals.
Okay.
These are things that are important to the organization. For example, we had one client that said their customer relationships were very important for them, and that they had to end up being the supplier of choice. And that was a goal that they had, that they said, I can't see this changing for us 15 years from now, 20 years from now. This is important to us, that we're always going to have this goal, that we are always going to be the supplier of choice. Now, how are they going to make that happen? Well, now we have to start looking at the shorter term, and that's when we come back in to say, okay, we're going to do some things over the next 6, 9, 12 months that are going to impact one or more goals and start driving things forward.
Okay.
So it's just a totally different approach on how we deal with those 7 things.
Okay. Talk to me about how the U.S. Navy adopted your model, as well as what is the name of the book, because I see it behind on the shelf. What is the book or the books that you've published?
Well, let me deal with the Navy first, because that actually happened first. So we did all this research, and I sat down and said, oh, wow, isn't this really neat? And I was actually sharing with a friend of mine, a colleague who is also a business consultant, and he was asking me, how's the research going? I said, really great. And I started writing some stuff down on a cocktail napkin, and when I turned it towards him, all of a sudden, I had written them in just the right way so that when I looked at them from an entirely different point of view, I ended up seeing the medicine wheel. And of course, I greeted you in Cherokee. I am part Cherokee, and I had spent 10 years before I started the research studying in depth about my heritage, my spirituality, because our family had sort of buried that. And here all of a sudden I had spent 3 years on the research, for high performance organizations. And with sharing this with my friend, I found that the two paths had crossed. And I'm sitting there going, wow, what I wrote down to him, and then when I turned it, that was a medicine wheel. I was lining up things like leadership is the emotion. So the medicine wheel has got four primary directions, which is east is the spiritual, south is the emotional, west is the physical, north is the mental. And so those lined up very well with vision, leadership, strengths, and innovation. The down is Mother Earth, which is foundation for all life. And you're not going to have high performance. The foundation of all life for high performance is trust. And then up is the sky vault. And that was another foundational element. It's the things that keeps things off of our head. And so that was that personal responsibility. That was a huge foundational element. And of course, the center is self or the people, and that was the putting people at the center.
Okay.
So we did the research first. We found the 7 things, and it was afterwards by accident that we found that relationship back to the American Indian Medicine Wheel. So I wrote a white paper on it, tossed it up on my website, and didn't think much about it. And I didn't write anything about the medicine wheel or anything, but I tossed it up on the website and didn't think anything about it. I belonged to a huge group of trainers, and I just posted out to them on the internet that we had the white paper, and it was there for download if you'd like to look at it. And didn't think much anything else about it. And then a little bit later, I started to present to my local SHRM chapter. I presented to our local organizational development network group. And I was getting some really good positive feedback from my peers. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get a phone call from the U.S. Navy. And it was the Center for Naval Leadership. And they had said, we're up here redoing all of our training programs up here, and we've come across your white paper. And our subject matter experts love it. We want to include your model in all of our training programs. What do we have to do to make that happen? We were at the height of the Afghanistan, Iraq conflicts, and I come from a long background of military. My dad was in the military, spent many years, and retired, and I grew up traveling around the United States. And so it was whatever I could do to give back. And so I said, all you have to do is send me a letter requesting it, and you can have it. We'll do whatever we have to do to make it work for you.